everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a great day. As you can probably tell from the mister behind me, I am dog sitting this week, so I'm in different surroundings than normal, but I did still want to get an art video out for you, and I have not done an art tips, tricks, and hacks tutorial in quite some time, so I'm excited to do that. I really enjoy experimenting with different tools and supplies, especially ones that you may not even think of using with art, watercolors in particular. So today's video is about using an X-Acto knife to create fine lines, details, and texture in your watercolor paintings. Works great for landscapes, or especially if you're kind of trying to paint like fur, fine lines, texture, things like that. So I will get some hands-on demo for that. Before I get into it though, I did want to mention my website, CoreyFrankCreates.com. It's the best way to get in touch with me and learn more about who I am. So you can sign up for my weekly email newsletter there. You can also get access to a free watercolor tree tutorial. And then when you're ready to take the next step with watercolors, really want to dive in with a more comprehensive thing, I have 3 different online watercolor courses that you can explore. So I'm just all about helping people, especially ones who are hesitant about trying watercolors or dipping into watercolors or have had a negative experience with watercolors in the past. I'm just really excited to be able to share the knowledge I have with folks like that, so you can fall in love with watercolors just like I have. So again, that is CoreyFrankCreates.com. I would love for you to go check it out. All right, without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so first we want to start with some paint. So I have my size 8 round brush here. And by the way, if you're interested in supplies and materials I would recommend, they are linked in the description. They are paid links. As an Amazon associate, I do earn on qualifying purchases, so just know that. But I would recommend these supplies regardless of whether I was earning anything or not. So, all right, I went into some sap green here. And first we want to lay in some fairly thick wet paint. And I'm just going to be very, very loose with it. I'm okay with there being some kind of bits of white of the paper showing through. This is going to be just very loose, semi-abstract. And then when I use the X-Acto knife, that's where some of the detail comes in. And I'm liking the cadmium yellow light with this. Letting that wet into wet kind of do its own thing. Just having a lot of fun with it. Loose and free. Now I am going to go into my burnt sienna. It's this beautiful rust orange. So some kind of earthy tones here and there. Get some more up top. I'm trying to work fairly quick and loosely because again, I want this to be a really wet paint, as wet as I can get it. More sap green. It's a little too dry. You can see it's getting a little too streaky. Okay. I think that'll do the trick. So now, while I still have this very wet paint, I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and I am going to start creating these grassy lines. You will hear that like lovely ASMR scratchy sound on the paper. So the wetter the paint, the easier it is to spread. So while the paint is still wet, you can literally use the knife to push it around, create these super fine lines and details. And when the paint is still really wet like this, you're going to see the paint start to gather wherever you laid the knife or wherever you stroked the X-Acto knife. But I will show you that after a certain time when it's semi-dry, and this is not quite there yet, so I'm going to keep, there we go. So right there, after you get to a certain point where it's partially dry, not all the way dry yet, and of course I did scrape up a little bit of paper on there, so it will start doing that a little bit, especially the harder you press. But when it's still partially wet and not all the way dry yet, sometimes you can even get, especially in the thicker paint, there we go, almost these highlights. So you can kind of scrape some of the paint up just like that. Almost getting back to the white of the paper to create these kind of white textures. Has to be a very specific kind of texture. It can't be, oops, I dipped my knife in the water, so it got it wet. But you want it to be fairly thick paint that is very close to dry, to get that kind of white get back to the white of the paper. But otherwise, if I wanted to keep going with this, I could just add some more kind of here and there. You can see you get this really lovely plant-like texture. The thicker your paint, if it's not as watery, is when you're going to get more of that white scraped out effect. But I like this because you can add really fine details. The only challenge is you do have to go back into your paint repeatedly to be able to get those lines and textures kind of going. But it definitely is a nice way to get some fine lines, some kind of grassy texture. You can experiment with it with kind of landscapes, creating, lines and swirls in your work. You can even try, let's see, if you get it wet enough, thick enough paint, you can even use it to draw something. So if you are trying to get, and of course I hit a patch of wet in there, so that just made it fan out with that wet into wet technique. But yes, if you want to experiment with really fine lines and details, and not necessarily use a detailed brush, if you don't have a detailed brush or you want to try something a little different, you can use this. A pen and a nib works really well too. I don't have those with me right now. Otherwise I would demonstrate that. But yeah, it's just a fun way to create some really fun effects. The other thing you can do is kind of do one of these numbers. Create this scrapey effect, almost like a palette knife. Great way to experiment with texture. Really get it on the side of your knife. Now I feel a little like Bob Ross. Happy little accidents. Just play around with it. Whatever you want. You have to have fairly thick, wet paint. This burnt sienna is not cooperating as well as I would like it to, so here we go. I also have some other examples of kind of practice texture that I did, so you can see. I'll hold it up a little closer to the camera. You get all these kind of nice scratchy fine lines right in the paint, and that's just straight from the X-Acto knife. So really fun to experiment with fine lines, details, and texture with not necessarily typical material that we'd use with watercolors. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video and found it helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. Until my next video, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, God bless, and I will see you soon.